Hey everybody. So just a quick um a quick note on this lecture. So it's short. We're going to talk about something called CI or CD, continuous integration or cloud deployment. And I'm going to show you a quick example. This is going to be in the next assignment. So you're going to launch your actual website or your local code to your own website. So if you've never heard of this before, um, continuous integration allows developers to set up their servers one time, and then the server will take care of deploying the application. Why this is handy is because typically you would have to write your code and then set up a web server, install Node or install IIS, whatever Microsoft technology or whatever it is. Then you'd have to FTP or somehow get your code to the server, install .NET, launch it, set it up to the DNS servers, like a lot of setup. And every time you make an update, you would have to do the same thing. For the most part, at least upload the code, recompile it, etc., etc. What a CI allows you to do, sometimes CD, I'm just going to say CI, is it allows you to automate this process. So again, these slides are pretty. Um, I won't go by the slides, I never do. But one of the older CIs is this thing called Jenkins, and I'm going to show you a real kind of world example. But before I do, we go to our crappy MS Paint, and you know that so far we have our laptop, and in our on our laptop we have VS Code, and we also have Git, and over here we have some kind of Git server, in particularly GitHub, GitLab, whatever. And when we commit our code to Git, we do it locally on our laptop, and then we do a push and send it over to wherever we've set up in for it to go. Now, the cool part of this is that, we can have another web server that's public facing, like this server, and we say web server public, so that, when you make your great Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, the rest of the world can see it. And this web server also has Git on it typically, and it will be querying a Git site that we have our stuff stored at, and it's constantly looking for updates. So that's when you do a commit and you do a push and it goes to GitHub. This web server will be constantly looking here and say, "Oh, hey, Harry pushed a new update. I'm going to download the update or, clone it to the server and then compile it and launch it automatically. Um, you know, launch the changes." This is awesome because every time we do a git commit, git add, and git push, we don't have to actually physically change or upload anything to the web server, which is awesome. But instead of kind of drawing it, I'm going to show you a couple examples of how this works. Like I said, one of these is Jenkins. We're not going to use Jenkins in this class, but I'm going to show you a real life example of it because it's commonly used. And the other one we are going to use is this thing called Vercel. So Vercel is a web host provider, and it also has a built-in CI and CD that we can use. So it's constantly checking um, Git. Another thing about doing this CI, you got to think about when you're working in real life. So in real life, if you go to CNN.com and you're working there, typically they're not going to let a developer, like yours, particularly a junior developer, upload changes to the website live. They're going to go through a process and check your code and then check what it looks like. It might go to marketing first. So there's actually always multiple servers, not just the public one, but there could be one that's totally separate just for development, right? Because you might have a development boss, a CTO that wants to see development, right? Wants to see your work. Then we have the public ones. Sometimes they call this public one production. And typically there are ones called staging. So these servers will also check GitHub. And you may have seen this before in GitHub where you actually can pick or change a branch of your code, and a branch copies your code. And typically you would be working on a development branch or a staging branch, and then you merge these codes together when you want them to be sent to a certain server. So if I was working on a site and I just, we're testing things out, I'd be in the development branch, which then the CI would push or pull just to this server. Our live server wouldn't be affected at all. When I was done development, I would then merge the development code with our staging code. The staging code is always the same as the server code or as the production service code, but with the caveat it's not public. So we have final last minute changes that we could possibly do or make sure there's no errors. Typically staging works with live data, and then eventually you would change your branch to production, and your production server would update. So let me show you two examples of this. One, I'll show you an actual Jenkins deployment. Speaking of deployments, you may or may not be aware of this, but Vercel is free. So at this point, at the end of this class, you should be able to launch your own website if you want to, which I'm going to show you how to do, or launch your own API, which is cool because you guys are, as far as I know, working on consuming an API right now with Java for your Android class. Well, now you can make your own. And the other one is there's a slew of different web servers, and the one I use for our work or our business is Amazon EC2. Now a lot of people use Amazon, a lot of people use Azure, and obviously it's a paid service. But the cool thing about EC2 is they also have a free tier, and I'm going to show you that as well. I think I should be able to log in here. Let's just check it here. Logged in from before. Oh yeah, hold on, we'll get there. So here we are. You can set up a free account, and if you go to EC2, that's their Elastic Cloud service. You can go to instances and pick launch instance, and you actually have a free tier, which is cool. It's a small machine. It doesn't have a lot of RAM, doesn't have a lot of storage. But the cool thing is you can pick different operating systems. So, Linux, Mac OS, Windows, Red Hat, Android, all sorts of stuff. And it's free up to a certain amount. You'd have to look into what the free one is. I pay for it. But when you do that, and let's say you launch a Windows machine, you can actually log in. Let me just bring this over like so. And I'm remote desktoping into an actual production server, which is kind of cool, right? And the server hosts a slew of websites. This is just a small deployment, but there are some live sites on here, but there's also some development sites. So sometimes if you're working under a budget, you still want to have a development site. You can have it on the same server. It doesn't have to be somewhere. And actually, I'm just going to show you this right now. So this is a real deployment, and I'm going to show you how this works. This is Jenkins. It's kind of old school, but you'll just see something interesting when it loads up. So part of the reason why I make our class do command line prompts like .NET build, npm whatever, and particularly Git, is because a lot of these CIs you have to at least set up and tell what to do. So, for example, Jenkins really is just a batch processing that tool that has Git built into it, right? So this would go to our Git repo, depending on the branch that we're on. In this case, it would be development, and then you can see there's a huge whack of command line stuff that we're running. So we stop our web server, we delete all the files from some temporary folder. And again, this is why commenting is important. I haven't looked at this in like 2 years, right? This is restores NuGet packages, then deploys, I don't know, deploy the production release. I guess this should be development. I'm not going to touch anything right now. And then, right, this looks like it creates a backup of the previous release just in case you have to revert, and so on and so forth, right? So you can actually see there's tons of command line stuff, and this is how real life kind of works. Using the play button is not going to make you a full stack developer. Using the commit UI in VS Code not going to make you a full stack developer. You really have to know how to do stuff in the CLI in order to do kind of stuff like this. Anyway, so that's Jenkins. You can try it out yourself. In fact, If you did decide to make EC2 a Windows machine and you tried Jenkins out, that'd be cool to see what you guys do, but not required for this class. We're gonna do something a little bit easier. All right, so to start off, real simple, we're gonna make a new node program, npm initiate, right? And this is just like how I showed you in class last week. The file is going to be called index.js. I'm going to npm install express. And real easy, right? So const express equals require express. I won't put you through the pain of me typing this all out. Let's just pause. All right, real simple program. If I run this, I should get hello world on the screen, which I do. Simple, easy, right? If you remember from last week, you guys are going to have an object here and send back, the connection to the database and or your objects and stuff. But for this demo, I just want the hello world to display. So this is on localhost. Now, I want to add it to Git because I want to make a new repo. So you're going to have to sign up for Git like we were talking about before. And I'm going to do git initialize, which makes our new Git repo. I'm also going to add a .git ignore file, and I'm going to ignore the node modules folder. And then I'm going to git add -a, git commit am, initial, first commit, we can even say. All right, so everything looks good. It ignored the folders, and now, we have our git. Oh, I didn't save our index actually. We have our code saved on our own. Sorry, or on our own system, right? So that's awesome. Now over on GitHub, I'm going to create a new one. I'm just going to call this node Vercel Express, demo, doesn't matter. Make it private so no one else can see it. Create the repo. Now we've done a bunch of this already. All I really need to do is add this remote branch, which will tell my Git on my laptop that I want to send this to GitHub at some point. So I'm going to add that as a remote branch, and then I'm going to do a push. And if I refresh this page, our code should be in here, which it is. Right, there's our index. Notice the node modules folder not there. Right, so that's number one. You should have this for assignment 2. Shouldn't be that difficult. What's new, however, is Vercel. So when you sign up for a Vercel account, use your GitHub login instead of email address, whatever. It just hooks it up. It's easier. And once you do, you can go to create project and import Git repository. Your Git name should be there, and then you should see all of your Git projects. There's the one we just made, Node Vercel Express, and then I can import it. Now, certain servers require certain setup. Vercel's no different. I've posted an article on eConestoga for you to look at on some of the weird caveats that Vercel has, and one of them is that Vercel doesn't just host Node programs; it hosts a wide variety of programs. So we actually have to tell Vercel that we want to, use a Node program, and we do this by making a file called vercel.json. And this is super important. If you don't have this file, it's not going to launch on Vercel's site. And again, you're going to have to go to the how-to on eConestoga, but this is effectively it. It just tells Node that we're going to, or sorry, Vercel that we're going to use their Node deployments, and then what our server file is, in our case, index. Again, I'm going to have to git add -a because I added a new file, and then I'm going to have to commit it, added Vercel, deployment JSON. Then I'm going to push it, and this should now allow us to actually launch on Vercel. So let's give it a shot. Import, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll do deploy. And when you do this right now, it's going out to our server, right? Out, like I'm over here on our laptop. I sent the code to GitHub, and this is technically a production server. Vercel, this one, is going over to, hey, there's a new thing that's happening on GitHub. I'm going to grab it, put it on online, and it looks like it works. It says, congratulations, you just deployed a new project, and there's a preview, right? It says hello world. And if you continue to dashboard, you can actually see they give you a few URLs, deployment, domains, whatever. You can also add your own domain to this. So if you come up with a new idea, it's pretty awesome. But we'll click on the deployment domain, and any of these work. I noticed that this first one, if you're clicking on it, yours would be whatever your project's called. I noticed that it gets cached, meaning it doesn't get updated every time. So I always use this second one, and you'll see that this is now live. Anyone in the world can access this domain, which is kind of cool, and you can see your website. Awesome, super easy, and that's why Node and Vercel is so popular, because just of how easy it is to set up. And check it out. So I can change this from hello world, and maybe I'll just put my name in here, and I'll do a git add -a git commit am, added my name, and I push it, and I don't have to go back to Vercel. I don't have to do anything because the CI is taking care of it. All I have to do is refresh this page, and it will take a few seconds, right? Like, it's not instant because in the background it's processing. And if you just wait, you'll see what happens. And eventually it updates. And there's my name on the live website. Right? So it's pretty neat. Now, if you think about this, you could make, your API, let's say, your person object, something like this. Instead of doing the send, we do res.json and then the object. Update git. Push it. Now, my Vercel site, it has an API, right? Right there, our endpoint is just index. Refresh the page, just wait for it to compile. It's going to launch. Like, you can actually watch what's happening. If you go back to Vercel, you can go to logs. You can see the build happening as it actually happens. But there you go. So now the cool thing is, if you were building an app and you had an API in it, here's your live public API, right? There it is right there. And there's my get. You could do a post. You can do whatever you want. Hook it up to Postgres, all that sort of stuff. Pretty awesome, right? Anyway, that's all I wanted to show you. The summary is, you don't necessarily need this code. You do need this Vercel.json specifically for Vercel, but that's not really what the class is about. The class is understanding that we're, the CI. But when you do your assignment 2, or sorry, assignment 3, we'll be launching this. You're gonna have to make a Vercel account and sync it up to your GitHub account, and then post it. All right, you guys have an awesome day.